wanna be in the know about how we put together our little show. If you like to hear the Puppeteers play the characters that you cheer, so join us as we go below the frame.
On this episode of Below the Frame, I am talking with the remarkable Debi Spinney. We get to learn all about Debi and find out a little bit of what she experienced alongside her dear Muppet Performer husband, Caroll Spinney. We're also going to hear a very special Jerry story in a song, too. So, come on, it's time to go below the frame.
Woo! Go below the frame.
Welcome to Below the Frame. I am Matt Vogel, and I feel like I say this every week, how excited I am for you to hear these little chats that I get to have. But this week is certainly no different. We have got legendary Sesame Street performer Caroll Spinney's wife, Debi, on the show today, and I am so looking forward to it. You know, Debi was at Caroll's side for most of his career on Sesame Street, and they did everything together. They were inseparable. And if you've seen the film I Am Big Bird, which I hope that you have, you already know that. But hopefully today you're going to learn something more, especially about Debi, who usually stayed out of the spotlight, but who you should know is just so kind and loving and really just the perfect match for Caroll. You know, you hear Muppet performers talk about being one big family, and that's true. And I can say that Caroll and Debi, ever since I first started getting to know them, and I'm not exaggerating, they always treated me like family, seriously. And I treasure that relationship with both of the Spinneys, and I love them both. And I think after this interview, you are also going to be in love with the Spinneys, even more than you probably already were before this. So let's get to it, huh? Let's go below the frame with Debi Spinney. Debi Spinney, welcome to Below the Frame. How are you, Deb?
I'm good, Matt. Thanks so much. I'm very happy to be doing this.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. You know,
I think.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I think that this is going to be, it's going to be kind of different than the other chats that I've had with Muppet performers, you know, and writers and such, because we're talking with you, who you kind of saw and experienced everything through, alongside your husband, Caroll, who if listeners don't know who Caroll Spinney is, I would be surprised, but you never know. So Caroll was the original performer of Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch on Sesame Street. And Debi, you were by his side for most of that journey. So
that's right.
Yeah, so like I said, it's going to be a little different than our other interviews, but I'm super excited about it. We're going to try to hit places that maybe we don't always get to, or maybe aren't as well known to people. And in doing that, I think we should start with your story, Debi. Because I think some people want to hear about where, yeah, it's fine, and then we're going to see where it intersects with Caroll's story. Okay? Because, if people want to see Caroll's specific journey, they can watch the brilliant film, I Am Big Bird, right?
Yes, we loved that project happened. It was really beautifully done. And, Copper Pot Pictures they couldn't have done it better, really. And what, of course, for us, we got surprised, and even they got surprised, because what started out to be a story about Caroll and Sesame Street, by the end of, looking through everything we've ever taped and photographed and, written about for 3 years, they came to us and said, we didn't realize it, but we really we were doing a love story.
Yeah.
And that made us go, yeah. Like that was really very sweet, because that's how we kind of, that is who we were. And we were, like you said, I've been with them since almost the beginning, of when he first started with Sesame Street. So it was lovely to have that out there. But you're right. I mean, obviously not going to talk about what my background is in the story of Caroll's background, but I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and first of 6 children. But after my next sister, 2 years later, they moved out to Long Island. And my mom, Joan, and my dad, Gene Gilroy, he was a musician. And he taught every kid in the entire neighborhood in New Hyde Park piano and then accordion. But he always said when the Beatles came along, nobody wanted to play the accordion anymore. Right. They wanted guitar. So he kind of lost those clients, I guess you want to call them. He also taught in a junior high. And so, like I said, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and, lovely home. The grade school was our backyard. So we we could roll out of bed and go to school. It was great.
Very convenient for late risers.
And, all was played in, oh yeah, we just threw something on and ran out the door, but that was pretty cool.
Can I ask you, Debbie, what kind of things did you do as a kid?
Well, we all had an instrument that we played, in the school band.
What did you play?
Certainly because of my dad. Oh, you're not going to, this is hysterical. And it's not the one I should have played, but my dad played the glockenspiel in the Army band. So I chose the glockenspiel, and I wanted to be in the parade, with the cape and the marching band and all that. So I did, but I didn't realize that really wasn't a good instrument for me, because even though I could play it, it was too loud and everybody noticed me and I couldn't stand it. All you need is one glockenspiel and it's louder than the whole darn band. And I just was so intimidated that I was going to make I was going to hit the wrong note and everyone would know it. So really, I needed an instrument that would blend in a little more. So that wasn't too good.
What should you have played?
But, I should have really concentrated on the piano because I think that was my dad's. And we all played the piano, but it was a little bit more like the cobbler's children going barefoot. Like he'd teach all day, and then, we'd get home from school. He'd get out of, his 10th student in a row, and we'd go, do you want to have a lesson? And we'd go, no. And he'd say, well, okay, good. I don't really feel like it anyway.
And also, if you were to roll a piano down the street in the marching band, that's also probably going to get a lot of attention.
No, it would have been tough.
Yeah, it would have been kind of difficult.
I suppose in junior high, I took up the violin, and I wish I'd stuck with that. But once again, this was probably just peer pressure. And my best friend was like, oh, that isn't, that's such an uncool instrument to be playing. And I was like, yeah, but it's like, I thought it was cool. No, it wasn't. According to all my supposedly cool friends, they said, drop that. And so I took their advice, and I regret that to this day, because I think the violin is a beautiful, beautiful instrument,
It's a very versatile instrument.
Well, it is. Oh, I love it. And I really fell madly in love with it when Caroll and I started to go to Ireland every year, because it seems that every kid in Ireland does play an instrument, and a lot of them choose the violin. And as you see, when you go to the old pubs and you see everybody sitting around, there's always a fiddle. Yeah. And so I didn't realize that it didn't have to just be the orchestra playing with the classical music, which I love, but I didn't understand that could be, that could get me into some cool places with the violin. But so that was a mistake. That's one of those regrets.
Why don't you take it up now?
Thank you, Matt, for saying that. I really should. We have 2 pianos in the house, so I fiddle about with that. And you're right. I really should. What the heck else am I doing? I think somebody said something like that to Caroll once, that they said that, I'm 50 years old and I want to play the piano, but it's going to take me 10 years before I'll be any really good at it, and I'll be 60. And Caroll said, yeah, but you're going to be 60 anyway. So why not be 60 and play the piano? It's never too late. Oh, that's good advice.
I love that advice. That's really great.
I should. So I guess I should take those words to heart and do something about it. Yeah. Yeah. So other than that, being near the schoolyard, we did a lot of sports and climb trees and all that kind of stuff. We were always outside. So you get 6 kids, you want to kick them out of the house. Get out, go play.
So when you were growing up, were you pushed to any type of career or any kind of education? What was that like? Not really. I was thinking about that the other day. I mean,
Let's see, we're talking the mid to late 60s. I graduated in 69. College didn't come up all that much. Number one, I suppose it was the money that would cost to go to college. My father being, a piano teacher, we'd had a beautiful house and we always had food on the table and, no complaints, but we didn't really have the money to send kids off to college. And I must tell you that in those days, I don't think I had more than one teacher even question, was I going to go to college? Like, I was the girl, and what are you going to do next? And really in my mind, I always wanted to travel. I was always kind of infatuated with, I think I was born with wanderlust, which Caroll always said he was too, which at least we got to fulfill that. Oh, yeah. We traveled an awful lot. Right. Yeah. But I always thought I wrote in about being a stewardess to whoever you wrote then, Pan Am or something. And they asked certain questions and I told them I wore glasses, and I tried contacts and they just didn't work for me. And they said, well, we don't want anybody who wears glasses. Really? So I was like, oh, gee whiz. Yeah. That was way back when you had to be like cookie cutter, perfect. And I wasn't. So they kind of turned me down, and I thought, all right, well, I'm not going to be a pilot. So, but I never even imagined I could be a pilot. But anyway, so I thought, you know what I really want to do is I want to go to New York City, because I love New York City, and I want to get a job and just earn money. I just wanted to earn money so that then I could travel someday. It was this, I was eager to get out in there. I love the idea of being a Manhattan girl, and all this kind of stuff. But so I didn't really think too much about, I graduated with honors and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't really pushed towards college at that point.
So
that's what I did. I went to New York and I got a job.
You went to New York, you moved to New York, or did you commute from Long Island?
No, I didn't move to New York. I certainly couldn't have afforded that right away.
Yeah.
Anyway, I lived at home, and New Hyde Park wasn't so far out. It was like a bus to the first stop in the railroad, the subway. And then that was in Jamaica, Queens. And then I would just, take the train in and walk a couple of blocks to work. So I had a couple of little jobs before I had Sesame Street, but at 21, I went and as the story goes, I had 2 interviews. It was freezing cold in January. I had the tiniest little mini skirt, and my legs were like frozen toothpicks. And the wind was howling through the canyons, as they call them. And I had a job offer for a secretary for Sesame Street and a assistant to a manager at the Playtex bra factory. So I said, all right, I'll try for both of those. The assistant manager job obviously paid a little bit more money, and maybe had a little bit of different kind of commands on what I could do. But well, how could you? I went to Sesame Street, and it was like a no-brainer. I was like, of course I have to work here. This is like, geez, wow, Sesame Street.
Can I ask you?
I just took that job.
So can I ask you, Debbie?
Yeah.
You obviously knew of Sesame Street. You had heard of Sesame Street.
I did.
And
yeah. I mean, I knew of Sesame Street. I didn't really watch it much because even my littlest brother and sisters were a little old at that point for the Sesame Street stuff. Yeah. But I still would turn it on because it was fun. It was love. I thought Big Bird was adorable. Uh-huh. I loved Oscar the Grouch. And, I loved them all. I mean, I just thought Sesame Street was great. And to me, it was kind of like, with my father being a musician, and my mom would sing with him before she had 6 kids and couldn't go out anymore and be, the singer in the band. Yeah. I kind of grew up feeling like I lived in a showbiz kind of world with my dad, because not only did he do, the lessons, but on weekends he had a band and he would play gigs and weddings and, parties and everything. So we were always surrounded by entertainment.
Right.
And I loved it. I thought my dad was a star. We all 6 of us always go, yeah, our parents were like, they were the star parents. Everybody else had regular parents, right. But it was just, we thought the world of the whole existence. So I think that suited my, just my personality, because I felt like I grew up in sort of in show business, even though it, technically wasn't, really show business, but I guess it is. It's the littler end of it. So I was very happy to be involved with a television show.
That's cool. Had you heard of good. Jim Henson before Sesame Street, or had you ever seen him on appearances?
I did. I saw him on the Ed Sullivan Show, because we used to watch that every Sunday, and he was on quite a bit, actually. Yeah. And I can remember, laughing along with my parents. They would roll on the floor when they'd blow something up or pull someone's nose off or whatever. Yeah. Because Jim was just so good at doing that. Yep. So that's how I heard of Jim. But I mean, I don't even know that when I first got the job at the Children's Television Workshop, if I really associated the fact that, that's that guy from Ed Sullivan, is this person in Sesame Street. It wasn't really in the front of my mind thinking of it that way. It was just, wow, this is show business. Yeah. And I really just loved the idea that it would be involved with something to do with it,
Yeah. And so at that job at CTW, what were you doing?
I was in the Community Education Services Department. I'm not sure they still call it that, but and I had like one boss particularly above me, so I kind of worked for him. His name was Andy Aguilar, and he was Emilio Delgado's best friend. So I got to know Emilio very well because he's always hanging out in Andy's office, and I was Andy's secretary. But they did things like, besides just regular secretarial work for Andy. They did outreach programs and market research. Occasionally they would steal me away, and because they liked the way I could print pretty neatly, I would actually write cue cards for for Sesame Street. That was my claim to fame, just because they liked my lettering. But so stuff like that, it was very interesting. It was a lot of, it was a lot of hard work, and certainly not the glamour side of Sesame Street. You're looking at the background stuff and trying to, doing research and making sure everything's working, which was very interesting. But my next step there was going to be moving over to be in charge of the children who were hired to be on the show. Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of getting me now over to the studios rather than in the offices, at Lincoln Center. But it never happened because some guy named Caroll Spinney came along and stole me away.
So let me ask you about that. So, well, first,
the rest is history.
How long did you work at CTW before you remember seeing Caroll for the first time?
I started working in January of 72. Mm-hmm. And I probably saw, my desk was situated so that I could look down the long hallway that went down to Joan Cooney's office. So all the big wigs were all in a row. Right. And so I knew that was, that was executive row. And once in a while I would see this guy who would almost appear to be bopping down the hall with long red hair at the time. And he would just kind of float or bop down the hall. And I just to think, someone said, "Oh, that's Big Bird." And I was like, "Oh my God, he's so cute." And so I knew who he was, but I didn't see him a lot because he didn't really have much reason to come over to the offices, other than, he was always on the set. And then it was 6 months after I started there that this is that story that everybody knows, if you want me to tell it.
I guess I was going to say, a lot of us have heard the story about how this happened.
Everybody knows this
from Caroll's perspective.
How it happened, yeah.
But I want to see, and I'm pretty sure that it probably matches up, but I want to hear your version of it. And somebody did ask, Liana _Rive, R-I-V-E, from social media said, what was it like to meet Caroll for the first time?
Well, so to meet him for the first time, I'm sitting at my desk typing away. And I look up, and that same hallway, I see him coming my direction, not away from me. And I see him looking straight at me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's coming right over to me. Well, okay, be cool. And he comes up to me, so innocent and so sweet and everything. And he, introduces himself. I introduce myself, and he said, I hope you don't mind, but I was wondering if you might like to have dinner with me tonight. And of course, my insides were doing flip-flops because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's actually asking me out on a date. And I was like, but of course, what most people already know is that at that point, I was married to my high school boyfriend that I dated for 4 years. We got married when I was 20. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't going too well, I will say that, only because he was a great musician, but and a nice guy, but he didn't have the confidence to go out and get a job. So I was the only one working, and we didn't really have anything. And it was a struggle. Yeah. So that wasn't going too good, but I was trying to, determined to try to make it work. So when he said, "Would you like to go out to dinner?" I, smiled and I said, "Thank you so much. That's very nice of you, but I'm due home because I have to cook dinner for my husband." Mm. And Caroll's face just kind of oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, "No, how would you know, really? It's okay. Thank you for asking. I'm flattered." So he was like, "Oh, okay." And then he kind of walked away. I could tell he felt terrible. I think he was embarrassed. And then that was that. And I thought, okay, well, at least I ran, when I got home, I called up my mom and dad and said, "You won't believe what just happened." So everybody was all excited. So 6 months went by, and then Sesame Street was throwing their annual Christmas party, which was basically drinks and hors d'oeuvres before dinner time, at Tavern on the Green in the park. And I had never been there before, and I was very excited to be able to go to that. And so when I walk in, I see Caroll across the room talking with, I think, Emilio and a bunch of the cast, I guess. And I'm like, "Oh, there he is. I'll go say hi." Because, obviously he's going to remember me. And I go over, and he's big smile and, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's so nice. It's so sweet. And we just started talking, and everybody else is chiming in. And he kind of leans over to me. He says, "Listen, when this thing's over, how about you stay and I'll take you out to dinner here at Tavern on the Green?" And I guess in my head, I didn't know what to think, because I know now I'm thinking, well, he knows I was married. But also by that time, 6 months later, through the grapevine of, the workplace, let's say, the water cooler talk, is that my marriage was, not doing well. And I was thinking, maybe we really shouldn't have done that. So I thought maybe he heard that it wasn't going well and he's just going to be bold and ask me out again. And so I said, well, thank you so much, but I got to go and, got to go home. So my husband goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. Oh, apologetic. And then I left. So 3 months later, which is when I was definitely, the marriage was pretty much over with, just let's part friends. I was hired by Sesame Street to sing. I was singing, but I was there to help children sing on a live album that was going to be the cast, the Muppets in the cast and children. And so we were in a recording studio. Now, meanwhile, you have to remember, my hair went from a pixie the first time to a little bit below the ears the second time, and now a little towards my shoulders the third time. So, and you see why I say that later. But anyway, so Caroll's there, and I think, well, geez, he's asked me out twice already. So I'm going to go over and I'll be, extra smiley, because now I know I could be free if he asks me out again, for the future. So sure, we hit it off like crazy. He acted like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you, blah, blah, blah. And we just went on, and he says, I would love to take you out to dinner, but we're going on tour for a couple of months. So would you mind if I called you back when I get home from the tour? And so I said, no, that would be great. Because I knew by then I'd be all finished, all free as a bird, so to speak. So the 2 months went by. He calls me up. We go out to dinner. Meanwhile, I was on a television quiz show, won all sorts of prizes, blah, blah, blah.
Wait a second. Hold on. You were on a quiz show and you won a whole bunch of prizes. So let's just for a second, we'll come back to Caroll. What quiz show were you on? I know.
I was on a quiz show called 3 on a Match. The host was Bill Cullen, who was very popular back then. And it was one of those shows they actually held it not too far down the street from Sesame Street, like on Broadway, pretty close. And I went to my lunch hour, and you had to take a written test, 32 questions, and you can only get 2 wrong. And they were like multiple choice, all kinds of trivia questions, like what ship crashed with the Andrea Doria? What's the Nutmeg State? What's a Zephyr? What blah blah blah? So I got 2 wrong, which means I made it. And then they called me back, and I went on this show. You had to. It was half luck, because you're only just turning over numbers on a board, and you get 3 in a match, you get that prize. But in order to do that, you had to answer a lot of questions. And I think one of the ones I won on was the Bible. And I'm not saying I haven't read the Bible, but in those days when you took the subway when you were a young girl, you found that you were bothered a lot by certain types of people who would press up against you. And someone said, well, if you read the Bible when you're on the train, they'll leave you alone. So I had a Bible. So I brought the Bible with me, and I read the Bible every day, and nobody ever bothered me again. And so the winning question was about the Bible. I had to answer 4 questions about what chapter was this, and who said that, and who begat who, or whatever. And I answered them all right. And I remember Bill Cullen going, I can't believe you got that right, because he didn't expect that I would know it so well. But that served me well, that little hint about the Bible.
Well, what kind of prizes did you win? You won twice?
Well, I won twice, because you had to play the game 3 times in order to win, and it took a day to do it. So it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I won when I beat these 2 people on Wednesday. I won a car, which I had no car. I'd never had a car.
Oh my gosh!
Because don't forget, I was married to someone who never worked, so I was lucky. I had a jar of peanut butter. Right. So I had a car, a colored television, which I never had a colored television, a living room set, which I still have some pieces that are in this house right now. Wow. And we love them. Just some extra pieces. I gave the rest. I sold the rest. And what was a stereo system? I didn't have that either. So
that's amazing.
Forgot one thing. An all-expense paid trip to Switzerland.
Ooh.
For 2.
Oh.
Now I had never been anywhere, and remember, now I'm like, I'm going to travel.
Right. That's what you wanted to do. You wanted to travel.
That was it. So now I had this trip to Switzerland. So then I got 2 new contestants, and then I beat them as well. That was the following Monday. And I won a trip to Hawaii for 2, for all expenses paid for a week, which was great.
Yeah.
A pool table I sold. A bedroom set I gave to my mom and dad. A fur coat, I didn't even take it because it was the ugliest thing you ever saw. And and what the very important thing was $1,000 in cash, because if you don't have the money to pay the taxes, you can't have the prizes. And I had no money. So the $1,000 is what the taxes were on the $11,000 worth of prizes.
Oh my gosh.
So that made me, that way I got the prizes.
Oh, that is really cool.
As a matter of fact, when Caroll used to go to work, I know I felt like a star all of a sudden, because every office at CTW had a television set, and all day for 6 days, that was on every TV in the place. I felt so, like, oh, look at me. But it's funny because when Caroll and I were first starting to date, and he would come to visit me at work, you have to go through security, and they would say, oh, we know why you're coming. And he goes, yeah, I want to see, Debi Spinney. And they'd say, we know you're just marrying her for her prizes. Say, yeah, yeah, that's it. So that was that story. And that was right before I met Caroll at the recording studio. And he said, in 2 months, he's going to call me. So he did call me, and he took me on our first date, June 4th. That's why we celebrate that anniversary so much, June 4th. And we really fell in love on the first date, honest and true.
Where did you go? What did you do on the first date?
He took me to Tavern on the Green.
Oh, he was going to take you to Tavern on the Green.
And I couldn't have gone to Tavern on the Green. Yeah, because we had met there. Now, you'd think I would have mentioned to him, like, oh, remember I saw you at Christmas here? But I never did. I think I didn't want to talk about the time when I was saying no all along. I was kind of, I wanted to start fresh. Like, I don't want to talk about the past. Right. So let's not bring that up. But what I didn't realize was that when he asked me to marry him 13 days later, so we got engaged 13 days later on Broadway, he picked me up and swung me around. He said, you will marry me, won't you? And I was like, oh my God, yes. And so that was that. And then of course, once we were engaged, I was going to come up and live in his house in the country, 150 miles away. So I couldn't keep my job anymore. So I worked until mid-July. And this, like I said, that was the beginning of June. So I worked till mid-July. And then we went on our trip to Switzerland. We took the trip, but we kind of padded it a little bit so we could, we rented a car and we just drove all over Europe, which was probably my favorite trip I've ever done, because it was like the hungry years, It was just, we couldn't afford anything, and yet everything was perfect. And we saw, we just saw so much. But when we were, and the 1 week that we had in Switzerland, of course, that was they were giving us big bottles, expensive bottles of wine and food and all that. And excuse me. So the first day I said to Caroll, I want to raise my glass to you, and I've got to make a toast, because I just got to make a toast. So he's like, oh, happy, like, ooh. And so I said, I want to make a toast to your persistence. And he said, what does that mean? And I was like, because you were persistent. You never gave up. You always came back. And he says, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, you asked me out at my desk, and then you asked me out at Christmas, and then you asked me out in the recording studio. And he just looked so dumbfounded, and he just said, you mean you were all those girls?
Yeah.
And I just was like, what?
Because of your haircut.
Yeah, he had no idea that he asked. Because of my hair getting longer, and I think very importantly, because I was in 3 different places. Had I been at that same desk, it probably would not have happened that way. But I was always in another place. So, just I don't know. He was always surprised, because he said, I'm such an observant person, being an artist and everything. And he really is. He just, he could close his eyes and draw anybody he just met. But he never knew it was me. And
that's really
I just love that story, because I'm the only girl he ever asked out.
Yeah, I love it. And the thing is, what he, there was clearly something about you that kept making him come back to you, even though he may not have realized it was you all of those times, which I love. I love it.
No, that's right. I know. I love that story, because I just love that all 3 girls were me. So, but after that, I moved up here with him, and of course we would commute to Sesame Street. And in those days, I think it was almost 7 months a year. It was like 110
shows,
new shows happening. So, and of course, Big Bird and Oscar at that point were the stars of the show. So he was really in almost every scene. And then every night he would have 2 to 3 hours, which I'm sure you now know, of homework to just get the script cut up to get inside a Big Bird and, that whole origami thing.
So let's talk about that a little bit. I do a version of it, but I also ask them to shrink the script for me so that I can put it in with me, because I can still read pretty close up and real small.
Yeah, little tiny.
But so can tell me real quick about, for people that don't know, the origami script making. What would Caroll do? He would get a script. Now, maybe I'll give a little bit of background. So inside Big Bird, you wear a monitor on your chest. And Caroll's was flat to his chest and very small, like a very small little window. I don't know, like a 2-inch, very small screen. But he would also have the script inside with him, and it would be Velcroed to the front of Big Bird. But, it's like pages and pages of dialogue. So, Debbie, how did Caroll get that dialogue inside the bird with him?
It's amazing, actually. First, he would read through the script, and as he was reading it, he would use a black magic marker and outline all his lines, and so that they would jump off the page. And then the tricky part really was having to get the line before his line and the line after his line, just so he'd know when to come in, because you can't just put your lines. You don't know what anybody's saying.
No cues.
So you just really basically no cues. So he would just cut it down into little bits and pieces. He'd had the big roll of Scotch tape and staples and, the little table in front of him every night in front of the TV and just trying to make it up. And then, figuring out how they were going to block it and then how they would cut. So, I can put this piece in for this 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then take it out, put the next piece in, so it came down to being kind of a work of art, really, but it was so much work.
Yeah.
At least with Oscar, you can paste it up on the inside of the can and there it is. But with Big Bird, it's, that's a toughie.
Yeah, not a lot of room inside Big Bird. Not a lot of room. You'd think there would be a lot of room.
And everything's, as you know, it's kind of glows yellow.
Yeah.
No, there really isn't. And yeah. So it's part of the art.
It was his origami, his scriptogami or something like that. I can't remember what. Scriptogami.
Yeah.
And he would also
script origami.
Yeah, script origami. And he also did this really cool thing. He would take I guess it was the cover page to the script, and he would fold it over.
Yes.
And he would draw the script number, whatever it was, 2352 or whatever, and then he would draw something. He would Oscar, Big Bird. There would be some sort of drawing on his script. Always, right?
Yes. And everybody, yes, always. And everybody kind of had their eye on it, like, ooh, maybe I'll get that one. And of course I have oodles of oodles here in this house, that's for sure. Any pad that was lying around or, he loved to draw so much that I literally have seen him drawing in his sleep. Like if I had put a pen in his hand and a paper in front of him, I think I could have had a picture.
Wow.
Because his hand was going like, just like he was drawing. And whenever he sat anywhere, if we went to a restaurant, he would draw on the napkin. He would draw and give it to the waitress or the waiter. So people all over the world have things that he would just draw, and of course it's usually Big Bird or Oscar, and they're like little treasures just spread around the
they
earth.
Are yes, they are. They're all over the world, absolutely all over the world.
They really are.
We'll be back with more from Debi Spinney in a few minutes, but first we have a very special Jerry story that comes to us today from Dave Goelz. Dave?
Oh, I don't think I could begin to express adequately Jerry Nelson's character. It was just as rich and complex as his voice. He was an amazing person, absolutely unique. There was never a Jerry Nelson before, and there'll never be one again. I'll just tell one story. It's pretty inadequate to capture this guy, but it was 1974, and the Muppets had gone to London to appear on a TV special featuring Herb Alpert and the TJB, Tijuana Brass. So Jerry and I and Jim and Frank were rehearsing in, I think it was the carpenter shop, because there were sets around. And during a break, Jerry went over to the back of one of the sets, and I saw him pull a little knot out of the wood framing. It was about 1/2 inch diameter and 1 inch long. And he brought it over to me and handed it to me. And I said, what's this? He said, "That is a knotty problem." And I knew that the game was on, because there was a long-standing Muppet tradition of people, pairs of people, handing artifacts back and forth between each other. The idea was that you had to slip it to the other person when they weren't aware. And of course, if you didn't have it, you were trying very hard not to get it. And if you had it, you were trying very hard to figure out how to slip it to the other person. Well, that went on and on and on. Jerry and I passed that knot back and forth for years. Finally, I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll see if I can end the game. Maybe I can package it up in a way that he'll keep it. So I made a beautiful little wooden box, and I lined it with velvet with a little recess that the knot just fit into. And I wrapped it up and sent it to him as a birthday present. And I never got it back. But that game had gone on for about 20 years. And it was just one little thing that he did when I first got there to sort of welcome me into the group. It was quite a privilege to be engaged in a game with Jerry Nelson. I treasured it then, and I always will. When Jim Henson passed away in 1990, Jerry Nelson wrote a tribute for him that he read at Jim's memorial at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. It was called Floyd's Lament. It was written from the perspective of Floyd Pepper, the bass player of Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. A few months later, I received a copy of this poem in the mail. Jerry had had a calligrapher render it just beautifully, and I had it framed, and it's been on my wall now for 30 years. I'm going to read it for you. Floyd's Lament. Fearless leader, Dr. Dog, toothsome piano man, playing your joyous song of is, was, and will be. Remembering always the fun, silly, poke, 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 Bert, he, he, he. Fearless leader, Mr. Hands Open Wide, sharing insights of joy and love. Here, will you sip? Will you feast? There is plenty for all. Fearless leader, whim of steel, you've convinced me, convincing John. Cantus, I hear your magic flute, whispering and echoing through the caves of my imagination. Fearless leader, green flippered gentleness, fill my dreams with your visions of unexplored possibilities. Shine on, eternally bright in our hearts and minds. Fearless leader.
Thank you, Dave. Coming up in a bit, we'll hear a song from Jerry, but now, back to the show. We're back with Debi Spinney. That's something that we didn't really talk about with Caroll because, just kind of seeing Caroll through your lens, but he was an artist. He was not only as a Muppet performer, but he was his own artist. He had his own style and his own artistic way of creating. And he would draw, like you said, he would sketch things, he would paint. He would do all kinds of things.
Yep, that's right. I think he did it all. He really did. And he drew before he puppeted, because he started drawing when he was 6 years old. And I even have some of the things that he did when he was like 6, 7, 8.
Wow.
And they're incredible.
Yeah.
They're really, really good. And of course, then puppetry came into his life when he was I think he saw his first show when he was about 6 in kindergarten, but he didn't do anything about it till he was about 8. But drawing, I think, was really closer to his heart and soul. He loved performing, and he definitely was meant to be a puppeteer as opposed to being an actor who was out there, because he had that shyness about him. It's not like, look at me. It's look at my character.
Yeah.
But with drawing, it just came so naturally to him. His mother was a great artist. His two children are great artists. It's in the blood for sure. His mother's father was a great artist. So he drew all the time, and he probably drew more than he painted, because paint takes more setup. It takes more space. You can't be as sloppy.
Right.
Like if you drop it, it ruins the floor or whatever. So and I cherish the paintings that I have, because they're much fewer and far between than the drawings, which are thousands of them. And I've been having it's a time since he's gone. Obviously what I'm doing is going through a lot of things, and because our house is big and it's got 50 years of memorabilia in it, and it's wonderful. But I'm sorting, not getting rid of, but sorting. Besides scripts and letters and fan mail and pictures, I am now going through. He would draw something while he was just sitting around, and he'd stick it on a shelf, and I'm either right over him watching, because I'm in awe of watching it happen. But if I wasn't, and he didn't happen to remember to say, "Oh, look what I did," it would be on a shelf. So I'm going through things now where I'm pulling out.
Wow.
And I'm going, what is this? And I'm finding these treasures.
Oh, that's so great.
I've even found love letters. It's like all of a sudden I find a love letter that he wrote that I don't remember he gave to me. So, and I found in my diary, little notes saying, someday, just remember you'll never be alone. And little things that he would write to me that I never knew were there. But it's like he's talking to me. And of course, I cry, but I also feel like he came and gave it to me.
Yeah.
They're wonderful. They're the best, the most wonderful love letters, and beautiful. And I don't know if I told you, but on our anniversary last year, the one I told you, June 4th, we always celebrated. Of course, it was my first one without him, and I was beyond myself. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I took out my old phone, my number 3, and which I still have. And I just looked through it because I thought, well, then maybe there's something on here I just want to see. And so I see this blank square on the phone. I was like, what the heck is that? It's black, So now Caroll was not very good with electronics. So I always knew that he didn't even know how to turn the phone on, let alone do anything with it. So I wasn't thinking anything. But so I pushed the button, and it's still dark, but it's Caroll. And it's apparently very late at night. I must be sleeping. And he has figured out how to turn this darn thing on. And he says, I've been lying. I think it's lying here. I think, or maybe sitting here, trying to write a song for Debra, and this is it. It's called "A Song for Debra," and then he starts singing it, and it is so beautiful. The melody is awesome. I was hysterical crying because he's singing to me a song that he wrote to me that I didn't even know about.
This is a thing the last hour I've been singing to myself. A little composed song called A Song for Debra. Da 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 do 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 do. Like that.
And then he finishes his little, whatever it is, and he goes, like that. So then my son, Ben, who plays the piano, he's made a beautiful rendition of it. And it's so pretty. And it's Caroll. And right after that, Ben was actually at the house at the time, keeping me company because he knew I was going to have a hard time that day. And we were going to go sit out on the back porch, which that was the time of year we always sit out on the back porch because the peepers are going, the frogs are going crazy. It's just very musical. Nature is crazy. So there's another button, and right near this, and I said, wonder what this one is. And it's a picture of me walking. What you see is me holding the camera, walking out to the back porch, which is exactly what I was doing the minute I'm looking at this. And you're hearing me say to Caroll, oh, it's so beautiful out tonight. And it's our anniversary. It's June 4th. It's so nice. We could celebrate it out here. And it was June 4th. And I was going outside. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm getting these little, you kind of want them to be little messages. And so that's what I choose to believe. But things like that happen a lot around here. I ask for the grandfather clock to chime when it hasn't chimed in years, and I cry. And because Caroll loved to wind it, I wind it up and I said, I wish you could make this chime for me. And it starts chiming.
Oh my gosh.
Things like that. Yeah. So I get myself the chills just now. It's just, I just know I talk to him all the time, and I really know he's around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love those connections that we
that helps.
hold on to with those that we love. And then that really is that, and our memories are keeping them alive and with us.
It's true. It's very true. And, you just, some days you have good days and some days you have bad days, but that's what everybody goes through. That's life.
Yeah. Let's talk about, Caroll was on Sesame Street for 50 years, which is an amazing achievement for anybody. Most people, they don't have that kind of longevity in a career. And he did it all, right?
True. Let alone playing a child for 50 years.
And he did it all on the show. He danced, he sang, he acted, he roller skated, he rode a unicycle, he operated Bruno
that was crazy.
and Oscar at the same time. I mean, what couldn't he do? He could do it all.
I know. Did you ever see him do Big Bird and Shivers when he sings with himself? We put that together for the symphony concerts that we used to travel around to, and he wanted to do something like really spectacular. So this song is I'm Much Bigger Than You Are, I'm Much Smaller, It's True. So it's a cute song, but it's a duet. So he came up with a penguin that sat in his left hand, the Big Bird's, of course, in his right hand, and he sang back and forth. They did it once on Sesame Street, too, because they thought it was so phenomenal. And I swear to God, one time they sang humming, and I don't know how he did that, but
well,
but I don't put anything
past Caroll either. Yeah. Do you remember, Debbie?
Yeah, but it's crazy.
What were some of Caroll's favorite things to do on Sesame Street? I mean, he did all those things and so many more. Do you remember, did he love to do the street story things? Did he love to interact with guests? What was the thing that he was excited about when he came to work? Because there's so much to be excited about when you work on Sesame Street. Was there something, though, that he was like, oh, I get to do this today?
Well, I know he was always very excited when Marty was in. He just felt that he laughed a lot when Marty was around. He says, oh, Marty's in today. It's going to be fun.
Oh, that's lovely.
So that always popped up. But I think he loved the street scenes, I think, the most. He really, really did. And he loved singing songs, but I think you probably know his least favorite thing was singing in an ensemble, shall we say, because he was very, I think he was a little, I don't know if it's intimidated, but he just found that it was a little more difficult for him to go left, right when everybody's going left, right, because he says, I'm always going right.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
So I think the group songs were harder for him because choreography wasn't his thing. He could dance as Big Bird, just as Big Bird, but ask him to dance with someone, a choreographed thing, then all of a sudden that became intimidating.
I think what that is, the question I was going to ask was, what was it about Caroll, do you think, that allowed him to connect with playing this child, Big Bird, and this grumpy old man, Oscar, and just be those characters? And my experience with Caroll is that what he had was this ability to be in the moment. And when you're in the moment, it feels fresh and it is happening right now. So to do something that is like rigid and structured, like right, left, or things like that, is not as easy to do when you are a person that lives in the moment. And his reads as Big Bird, every take was different and fresh, and it just felt different every time because he was, to me, living in the moment. And I don't know. What do you think, Debbie?
Yeah. I think you put that really, really well. And it does kind of explain why the rigidness of a choreographed number or whatever was hard for him, because he really, It sounds corny, but he really was Big
Mm-hmm.
Bird. So when he's being Big Bird, that's who he is. He's not Caroll being Big Bird. He's Big
Right.
Bird, and the same thing came with Oscar, like you said. And so, he's not pretending to be this. He is
Yeah.
this. So I think that's why, he took it very personally. I remember when he used to tell a story about how Jim took off Ernie once and laid him down, like not on the floor, but just down, like, okay, put that over there. And Jim, Caroll was like, "Oh, Ernie, sorry, he didn't mean to put you down so hard." And Jim goes, You feel like that about your puppets?" And Caroll goes, "Of course I do." And
Right.
Jim's like, "No, they're just a tool." No, that's not a negative thing about Jim.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how he saw it, But Caroll really, Picklepuss in this house,
Mm-hmm.
Carol's Picklepuss, he gets a place at the table for Pete's sake,
Yeah.
They're kind of real to
Yeah.
him. And Carol's nature. I mean, he was a boy through and through, a child through and through, even when he was in
Yeah.
his 80s. So that came really easy to him. He loved
That's
to play.
a brilliant part about being,
and-
to be a really good Muppet performer, I think, or performer of any kind, I think you have to be willing to play and just be in the moment and play and listen and just enjoy.
You do.
Which is what I thought
Yeah.
Caroll was just so good
I
at.
agree
He
with
was
that.
so good at it.
Yeah,
Over
you're
the
right.
years, Debbie, you were on set for so many remarkable things. Can you think of anything off the top of your head, moments that stick with you even now of, oh my gosh, I remember I was on Sesame Street when blank?
Well, I think the one that really comes to everybody's mind as far as, the greatest show they ever did probably was Mr. Hooper's death show, because, everybody was feeling the pain and they didn't need to do another take. It was real. Like we were just talking, it was in the moment. It was
One
real,
take?
I think they did two just in case, but they took one because they didn't need to do two.
Wow.
That's how I remember it. But it was there for that, and everybody was just in tears. It was so beautiful, and he wasn't really sure and he loved Norman Stiles, but when they first chose Norman to write it, Caroll was like, "Oh, I hope this is going to work," because Norman's like, funny off the wall kind of thing, but it turned out to be, he went up to Norman after that and said, "That was right on. You couldn't have done it any better than that," But I remember Caroll. One of the things that when because everybody always the Snuffleupagus thing, where is he imaginary or is he not? And then Caroll always felt that. Remember, I think he told you he felt they made a big mistake with doing it all in one day.
Yeah.
It should have been almost like the whole season. First Bob sees it, then it just would have been funny all along, rather than boom. He says if you woke up on Friday, all of a sudden Snuffy's there.
That's right.
So he just kind of felt like that's it. Wait a second. So that was one of the things that kind of irked him a little bit. But I guess the Mr. Hooper thing. He was always excited about with guest stars and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and you met so many celebrities over the years, over the decades. And, being married to the guy that plays Big Bird and Oscar. Can you tell me about any of your favorites, or Caroll's favorites too? Maybe some celebs that you kept in touch with or developed friendships with, or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I'd have to say that the one that we kept the most in touch with, and we, I don't know if anyone asked him, he'd always say his favorite was Waylon Jennings. And we met him doing Follow That Bird. And Caroll got to spend like 2 days in the cab of a truck with Waylon, and they're, singing "Ain't No Road Too Long." They had to raise the cab of the truck so Big Bird's head didn't, scrape the top. And Waylon's smoking cigarettes, and then Carol's like, "Oh, what the hell? I'll have one too." So just because it was like, what else am I going to do? So we kept in touch with Waylon and his wife Jessie, and in fact, they'd come over here, or we'd spend Christmas with them at their house. And whenever Waylon never took planes once he had that scare. Remember he was the one that was supposed to be on the plane that the Big Bopper died on, and he had given his seat up to is it Buddy Holly?
Yeah,
I guess it's I think it's
certainly.
Is it Big Bopper and Buddy Holly? I think it was. Anyway, so he gave up his seat for the guys, and they died. So he didn't fly anymore. So he always had this gorgeous big bus, that you sleep on and just party on and all that kind of stuff. And so whenever he'd be around here, he'd tell us to meet him, and we'd go, and his roadie would then take our car so we could stay in the bus with Waylon and Jesse. And we had a ball. There was so much fun. And then every concert, he would have us sit on stage.
Oh, that's cool.
And, you feel so special when you're on the stage, and he was much more rock and roll when he was like, what do they call it? Outlaw rock, like even much rockier in person. So we would sit there, and occasionally we'd sneak Oscar with us, and Oscar would appear, and Waylon loved that. So I guess he was the most fun and the one that we had the most interaction with, from the show. That's not counting, Jim and Jerry and Richard.
Right.
They're stars.
That's true. Here's a couple quick questions related to Sesame Street that people sent. At M. Donsky asked, what was it like being on Sesame Street for the first time? So, Debbie, can you remember that very first time you actually walked onto the set?
Yeah, I do. It was mostly just, jaw dropping. That's a tongue twister. Experience, because everybody's, of course, Caroll, I'm going in with the star of the show. And, now I'm going to also see Big Bird in person. And as you know, because you've seen it a million, the reaction that anybody gets when they first are standing next to Big Bird, it's completely mesmerizing and overwhelming. And he's so beautiful. Yeah. And you just get lost. You're just like, oh my God. I was in awe of the whole thing. And of course, Caroll's introducing me as his fiance. And I'm like, oh my God, this is my life. Yeah. How did I get in this fairy tale? It's amazing. And you know what? It never wore off. I felt the same way every time I went. Yeah. If Caroll, was across the room, he always used to get upset that he didn't know I walked in the door, like we should know we're in the same place. Yeah. And he'd look up, and I'd have him standing there for maybe 5 minutes, and he'd look up and he'd give me this great smile. And then he'd come over to me. He goes, I should have known you were here. And I was like, oh, well, it's okay.
Here I am.
This should be an aura around it. Right. Here I am. It never wears off.
What was Sesame Street like in the early days? What was the atmosphere like to be on set?
Oh, I have to say it was so much fun back then, because you got Jim and Frank and Jerry and Richard and Caroll, and there I am standing next to these guys, watching them, because that to me was the show, was watching their faces while they're puppeting, and of course they were hysterical. I mean, if only we had the outtakes, because I know. That would be a show in itself, because they would get crazy and occasionally off the the deep end, but it was, you were laughing the whole time. It was so funny. And then they got the work done, and they were all like this bunch of boys playing. And Fran was there too, and she's just like one of the gang as well. But my memory is of the guys with their hands over their head, and just the silliness that would come out. Yeah. And and Caroll, was excited to be around them too. I mean, he loved Jim since the first time he saw him. I guess would have been probably Ed Sullivan show too, So I think for Caroll, it was sort of like, wow, I'm part of this. This is just so
pretty
strange.
Amazing. What was something that you remember about Caroll that instantly makes you smile?
Oh, his smile.
I know, yeah.
As soon as I see his eyes, well, his eyes too, but his eyes smiled too. But he would smile, and it just makes me smile. I keep a picture of him smiling right where I sit most of the time, and I just look up and I smile because he's smiling at me.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it. He just had the best, little twinkly eyes and a smile.
Yeah, and a lot comes through in that smile, especially he's looking at you.
Yeah, his face gave a lot of expression. Yeah, I know.
You said this before about Switzerland being probably one of your favorite vacations, but you would go to Hawaii every year for a long time.
Yes.
What were those times like? Yeah. What would you do when you went to Hawaii? And how long would you spend there in a go?
They were idyllic. Well, first of all, let me just backtrack. Switzerland, that was the trip I won, remember, in the quiz show. Yeah. But that's just and it's the Alps that really, and the architecture. But actually, we didn't really enjoy, other than that trip, we actually didn't enjoy Switzerland very much. We liked Germany and Austria.
But the experience,
so then there is a difference.
Yeah.
The houses look a little different. The food is a little different, and Switzerland's much more expensive. And also, Caroll was stationed in Germany in the Air Force, so he spoke No, they speak German in all of those countries, but we just kind of had we felt we had a kinship with those parts of the Alps where Germany meets Austria, and that's where we always went. Stay in the same room, same place, same everything. But with in Hawaii, we once we had the trip that I won, we of course, who doesn't fall in love with Hawaii? Right. And so we I think the next time we went back actually was when we did Sesame Street for, I believe it was almost 2 weeks. We were on Kauai, and we hadn't been there before because we had only the trip was on Oahu, and we fell madly in love with Kauai because it's magnificently beautiful. And then once we saw that the other islands are really cool, we started island hopping. And when we hit the big island, which is called Hawaii, we loved Kona. And so in I think it was 89, we bought a house there. And it was like a wooden, all screens. You didn't really need windows in Hawaii. And it was one lot from the sea, but it was a vacant lot. So we could kind of look through the brush and see the sea. Wow. And it was a lovely little neighborhood. And it had a beautiful closed, not screened in, but overhead was it was a lanai that had a roof. So Caroll set up his easel, and he went out and got paints and airbrush and the whole works. And every day he would paint on the lanai. And I took up needlepoint because I wanted to sit next to him and watch, but I was like, I got to do something. Yeah. So just sit here and watch. But and then you could hear the sea, and the temperature was perfect. And so it was very idyllic days. We'd have tea in the morning, and then he'd paint in the day, and I'd sit next to him. And then certain days we would just say, the heck with any work, we're just going. We always picnicked, which we did up here at home all the time, and in Hawaii we'd go out later in the day. We'd find a beach, and Caroll was so funny. He'd always have to have. We both of us weren't good with the sun, but he definitely shouldn't be in the sun. He was so fair. But we'd put up a tarp, and he had to have garlands of flowers all around the tarp. He had to decorate anywhere you went. And so in the backpack, he'd have the tarp, the garlands, the pretty towels for the rugs for the floor, and then we'd have a little barbecue and bring whatever food we were going to have, and some kind of maybe some wine or some whatever. And we just had the best time being on the beach, and then we'd come home, and in the back of the Hawaii house there was a little screen house kind of thing. Maybe it was 12 by 12, and it had a big hot tub in it. And we weren't really hot tub people because we don't like being in hot water. So we kept it like body temperature. So it felt more like a pool. And so we'd light candles, and we'd, get in and it was totally private. So you didn't have to wear any clothes. So there we are, little skinny dippers, with the candles, and, sitting out back in the jungle. It was really like a jungle. Cool. And we spent every evening in that hot tub, and just, it was so wonderful and so lovely. We had it for 14 years. So actually I came home, I wound up having, I think he did 2 paintings one year. So 15 paintings came out of having the house, because each year he would do a painting. And they're big canvases, and then we'd ship them home. So, so that's kind of the treasures I have left over from that, Yeah. So those were great days. And we got to meet a lot of nice people, and we even continued going back even after we sold the house, but
that's right.
Just to see the friends.
And then I know that you also would then at Christmas time, you would always go to Ireland.
We go to Ireland, and luckily this year, of course, last year it was closed. The whole country was closed because of COVID. But this year they are allowing people in, and travel if you're vaccinated and all that, which is good because I'm certainly vaccinated. And so I'm going to go, and it's hard because I'm going without him, but they're going to plant a tree in his honor. And I already have a tree planted there for my mom in her honor. And so I'm going to do that. And they've asked me to make a coloring book of my life. I thought it was going to be like of Caroll, so I could easily just go rummage through all his drawings, and I could have in 2 seconds I could have a coloring book, just have the kids color all his drawings. But no, they wanted it to be about me. I'm like, what the heck? I don't even draw, So I got my son Ben to come and help. I put it all together what I thought I wanted. So I stole a few things from Caroll. I decided to call it My Favorite Things, and my favorite thing was being married really to Caroll, but I put, because I thought for coloring purposes, being married to Big Bird. And Caroll had drawn us on our wedding day as Mr. and Mrs. Big Bird. So I used that cartoon so the kids can color that in.
That's great.
And then just other, picnics. One of them was picnics and stuff like that. So yes, I will be going and putting up our tree and decorating it just like Caroll would with me.
Yeah.
And hopefully he'll be
there.
With me over my shoulder.
He'll be there.
Yeah, I know he will, especially Ireland.
Yeah.
What a spiritual place that is.
Let's talk. Yeah. We talked about Hawaii. We talked about Ireland. Let's talk about the home that you live in now. And I've been there, and it is an amazing place. But if you had to describe it, it is. Yeah. If you had to describe it to somebody that had never been there, what would you say about your house and how it came to be?
Well, first of all, Caroll bought the land that the house is on in 1961 for $2,000. He got 48 acres of land, which was $40 an acre, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
But then again, you've seen it now. Then it was really just very thick woods and swamps, and no building or anything there. So over all these years, it's been cleared, and where there were thick groves of laurel and stuff you couldn't even walk through, there's now grass. And the swamps, in the old days, they used to encourage you to cut down the dead trees, dig out the muck that's in a swamp, put it on the side, let the dirt drain, because it's very fertile dirt. And then the water, we're on a water table here, it just fills up spring-fed, instantly. So they become, what was a swamp is now a pond. Then the year later, the dirt is all dry, you spread it around that pond, put some grass seed on, and out pops grass. Wow. So, that's making it simple, but and certainly not counting for how much that costs. But that's really how it evolved over the years, And then the house, Caroll built the first part of the house, which now it's rather big. It's like 7 levels, which is crazy. Now that we got older, we were like, what were we thinking? But it is all kinds of levels, and it looks like a big chalet that we based kind of on, in the Alps in Bavaria.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's the style kind of. And then, it's just, we have 13 picnic spots, like I was saying earlier.
Can you name some of those, picnic spots?
Oh, there's Lover's Leap. There's Beaver Lodge. There's Cliff House. That's a gazebo and a picnic area. There's Lake House, same thing. Perillo Palisades, which is named after my sister. The whole place is named after everybody. You go wherever you go, it's it's a name of somebody in the family. Jessica Lake, that's our daughter. Let's see, they go. I could go on and on and on, but that's what we hardly ever cooked in the house. We always picnicked. So we cooked really nice, meals and set it up really pretty and all that. But we just love being outside. So that was really fun.
So
Caroll was a caveman in a previous life, I know, because he loved building fires. Not a pyromaniac kind of fire, but
fires that served a purpose.
Nice, perfect fire.
Yeah. More with Debi Spinney in a minute, but first, it's time for a song from Jerry Nelson. On the podcast, we have featured songs on here from Jerry's album Truro Daydreams, and today is another one of those. The song is called Zanzibar, and this is a demo of that song that found its way onto the final record. So take it away, Mr. Nelson.
Got our bags, our reservation, ready to follow that star. Got our shots and inspiration to travel far. Car, a plane, a taxi, taxi, plane, and a car. Gonna take us to Zanzibar. How exotic. Pleasures await us as we paddle in the lagoon. Is that pirate treasure or reflections of the moon? Mystery is in the air, Africa, moon and star. On the road to Zanzibar. the horizon disturb us not at all. As we leave the bars to gaze at the stars, hear their song of love. Bush babies all around us join in the cosmic song. Oh, honey, it won't be long. You know what I'm talking about. Exotic nights in the tropics, dancing the jungle beat. To hear the tide up on the shore, oh, what a treat. Well, it's burned right into our memory without leaving a scar. I'm talking about Zanzibar. Sacred ibis grazing along the mangrove shore. Now we know what life is for.
Thanks, Jerry. We're back with Debi Spinney. Tell me about Caroll. You know, the last few years of his life, he was diagnosed with dystonia. What is that, and what does it do to somebody?
Well, we certainly had never heard of this before. When Caroll was about 80, towards when he was going to be 81, which is the end of the year, his left hand, the three fingers, pinky, ring, and middle, started to curl a little bit in, and they thought it was something called Dupuytren's syndrome, if I'm saying that right, that looks just like that, and they can do operations to make it better. But then they discovered he had all sorts of tests just to make sure it wasn't like a stroke that was affecting him, or his heart was great. He never had a stroke, none of that. But then he went and had this particular kind of test that they do because actually he had a little pain on the side of his head on the right side. And so they were like, well, let's just look at the brain. We'll do a scan. So they did a scan and they said that he had this thing called dystonia. And we were like, what the hell is that? And they said there's a large family of neurological conditions, which are called Parkinsonisms. Parkinson's disease is in that family, but this wasn't Parkinson's disease. He didn't have tremors like people with Parkinson's. But it is a neurological thing. And they said that eventually it will, your arm, since it's showing up in your left arm, which they were surprised because usually it shows up in your dominant arm, but his right arm never was compromised at all. So it showed up in the left, then the hand started to curl a little bit. And then over time, even the elbow started to curl in a little bit, so his arm was kind of like against his chest. And he really, didn't really have any control. But, the thankful thing was it wasn't painful, which it could have been, because when your muscles start to do that, it can be very painful. Yeah. But luckily for him, it wasn't. So thank God. But and we went to the doctors and there was really not much you can do. They tried a medication that they do give Parkinson's disease patients, but it didn't do him. It didn't make sense to give it to him because he didn't have the tremors. Right. And also it made him very lethargic. And as it is, dystonia makes you lethargic. So you didn't need to be like getting to be zombie-like, So I said to the doctor, if it's not going to do him any good, why are we doing this? This is crazy. Yeah. And that doctor particularly said, well, I think he could just live with this until, he'll probably be 92 when it comes to an end. We don't know much about it. And we thought, and, we weren't happy with that because Caroll was sure he was going to live to be 100. And I told him he had to. You have no choice.
Must. Yeah. Yeah.
You must. So, we didn't really, worry about it too much. But then, his arm got worse and worse. And then the worst part, I think, almost from the beginning, maybe a year after that, was his balance started to go. Because that's one of the things with dystonia, and I guess a lot of those neurological things. So he was starting to really need somebody to make sure he didn't fall down. And he did fall down. Luckily, he had great bones because he never broke anything. But I mean, he fell down a huge staircase and, he would get bruised and battered. And because he didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to go downstairs," or, "Would you walk with me?" or whatever. He would get up and say, "Oh, I got up fine. I can walk over here fine." And then you think you can, but then you fall. And then I'm like, "What? You got to call me, when you need to do something that you may fall and hurt yourself." So, it got to that point where he really did need to have somebody doing that. Luckily, it affected his mind only in the slowing of the process of thinking, like he wasn't quick on the ball, but he wasn't forgetting things or who people are or, things like that. Which I think that does happen. And the other thing with this disease, and I think it happens with all Parkinsonisms, is Caroll, who had the most beautiful handwriting I have ever seen because he was very artistic. He could calligraphy, the whole thing. And of course, drawing. But his handwriting started to change. It became very teeny weeny and almost scratchy, like if I could describe it as scratchy, like chicken scratch almost. And I was like, he used to be beautiful. And it was actually affecting how he could write, which I thought was so odd. And he did too, but it wasn't yet affecting the drawing. It was only towards the end, like maybe the year before, the drawing started to change. And I think that's the thing that broke my heart in many ways the most, because I knew that was the most important thing to him. He graciously gave up Big Bird and Oscar, because he knew he had to. But to not draw, that was the thing that he could do in his sleep. It was his, people would fall to their knees and they go, "How did you do that?" It was his claim to, in his mind, his claim to fame, like, oh my God. And so only at the end, I realized, oh my goodness, he can't even, the drawing isn't, the brain wasn't getting the message to the hand. That's basically what was happening. So there's a lot of disinformation out there. There's a lot of unknowns with dystonia, and neurological things in general, basically. That, the brain is such a complicated thing. Because Caroll had a very healthy body. He
oh my goodness.
Everything was like, his doctor always says, "Oh, you're going to outlive everybody. Yeah. Everything's in perfect shape."
Yeah.
But then he got dystonia, and they don't know why you get dystonia. So it was just, I don't know. You want to say the luck of the draw? I guess that's what it was. Yeah. But it was just such a shame because he just loved life.
Yeah, he really did, and he was an amazing example of somebody living a wonderful life. He really was.
Yes, he did. And I always have to tell myself that he had an incredibly wonderful life. And he said that many times. Yeah. He always, he never complained, even when he was sick. He really wasn't a complainer. He never, thank God he wasn't really in pain. He made the most out of every day. He always did. Yeah. I mean, we both knew that neither of us we were always going to be there for each other, always. And I'll always be there for him forever, but, it's just a week before he passed away was like almost Thanksgiving. So a couple of days before that. And he wasn't really in great shape, but, he was very tired but he had a great Thanksgiving. He ate a humongous plate of food and I was like really so happy. And he just, he looked at me, he goes, "I think I really am going to live to be about 100. And this is like, he's really not doing too good. And I thought, well, if anybody can do it, he certainly can. It wasn't meant to be, but, so.
Well, I hope you know this, Debbie, that Caroll was so lucky to have you, so lucky. And that I know is hard, taking care of somebody, your person, taking care of them like you did and being there for every moment. I am so grateful. And I know Caroll is to you for being there for him,
I wouldn't have it any other way. And gosh, if I could, I wish it was me who had it, just because I felt so bad that here's this incredible human being who has to have this happen. But, none of us know what's going to come along. And, we've lost our pain. You lost your dad. I lost my dad. You lose them as it goes. And now they're getting older. Yeah. You're losing more.
You lose people that are closer to you, that are friends, that are, it becomes more of a reality that is life. Life is losing things that you love and figuring out how to move on beyond that. And to me, keeping that person alive through their memory and my memory, or through my memory of them.
Definitely. Yes, I believe that's true too. They do stay alive as long as you know them, remember them, and love them. That's it's still there. I feel the same way today as I did. It's almost 2 years ago
Yeah.
now. It was, what was it? Today's the 20th, so 2 days ago was the 3-year anniversary of Caroll's retirement. On the last day, he taped the
Yeah.
50th season, and we did the retirement
Yeah.
party for him. So that was 3 years
Oh my
ago,
gosh.
and then coming up, December 8th will be 2 years. That he's gone, and. Yeah, that's unbelievable because it just doesn't. Sometimes it seems like forever, but honestly, I had the other day. As a matter of fact, when I came back from being away with my cousin, and we always did the same thing every year. After we played bingo, she'd go play cards, and I'd go call Caroll and tell him how I did. So I'm walking away from her, and she goes, "I'm going for cards," and I said, "I'm going to call Caroll." And I really thought I was going to call Caroll because that's what I do. And I walked like a couple of steps, and that just did me in because I was like, oh my God, I can't call him. I ran to the room and I lost it for about a half an hour, but because I forgot. And it was that moment of pure happiness that I was going to go call Caroll, those moments are very rare,
I think maybe that's part of
nowadays.
our coping with somebody that we love no longer being here is we can almost feel like, oh, they're at home while I'm away, or they're away while I'm at home. And you kind of can fool yourself in a way to believe that they're still with you, right? And then it hits you in those moments.
Yes. Oh, you do that. It's very easy to do. And maybe because, people like you or me, we travel a lot actually. And so you're gone and you think, oh, they're over there.
Right.
They're just not right here with me. They're back there, and then you go home and it's like, oh.
Yeah. Then it hits
Okay.
you again.
No, I was
the
wrong.
reality hits you.
Yeah. So you can fool yourself very easily, really. Yeah.
Okay, Debbie, I'm going to, now I did this. I've not done this before on this podcast, but I asked people on the internet to send along questions.
Okay.
And they did. They sent along a lot. And I can't possibly get to all of them, but I'm going to try to get to some of them. First of all, a lot of fans passed along love for both of you and saying that they love you guys and they miss Caroll, which we all do. And then here are some questions for you. Patricia Miranda asks, have you kept in touch with Xiao Fu from Big Bird in China?
Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. It's been a couple of months now, but I do email her and she emails me, and she's very successful in banking in China and mostly Beijing, I think, and she goes to Hong Kong a lot. She always says how she's still looking for her Caroll because she's never found a love yet. And she's I guess she's in her 40s now, but she has such the days of Big Bird in China are her happiest childhood memories. So we talk about that a lot.
That's lovely.
So, yeah,
that's nice.
She's a lovely girl. I'm hoping she gets to come and visit.
Yeah, that'd be great. Jaden LeBron asks, what do some of your hobbies consist of, and how do you stay active in this day and age? What do you do?
Active as a word. Okay, my hobbies. Well, I mean, I still occasionally needlepoint because I do find that relaxing. But I mean, I am traveling, so I suppose we could say traveling is a hobby. Really, what I spend my days doing mostly is sorting, going through files and files and cabinets of wonderful things, drawings and letters and fan mail and scripts, because I'm trying to put together. This might be, maybe this is a question that's going to come up, but I want to put together I'm not sure what to call it, a library, a museum, an exhibition of Caroll Spinney, the life and times of Caroll Spinney, kind of. And I have an interested place, which is here in our town of Woodstock. They have a private academy. It's Woodstock Academy. All the kids go there, and some from even surrounding towns. It's very highly thought of, very good reputation. This particular building, the school was built in 1801, so it has a big history. And they have a beautiful new library, which has lots of big space and wall space. And they want me to use that as the Caroll Spinney library.
That will be very cool.
And so I'm going to have, it's going to have his puppets, and it's going to have his drawing board and lots of posters and pictures and scripts and Emmy. And, it's just in the beginning stage. So that's going to be a tribute to Caroll that after a year there, they're thinking that maybe it'll even travel to
That would be
different
great.
schools.
What a great piece
you know,
of
just to,
history that would be.
yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things I'm doing, answering that question. That hobby is looking through stuff to pull out what's important, what would people want to see, what would be good. You know, I mean, I'm a little, you know, I also have to make sure there's good security because
Oh,
I
right.
don't want,
Yes.
you know, things to disappear.
Of course not.
But I mean, it's a very, they have a lot of security. They have a lot of foreign exchange students come to this school. So they just have a lot of security just for the kids even. So that's like my big hobby right now is getting that thing
That sounds
together.
like a lot.
So I'll let everybody know when it's up and
Maybe
running.
one day it'll become, there'll be a companion book to go with it that has Caroll's artwork and even pictures of the puppets and things, and it would be really cool.
That would be great. That would be really great. And that's another thing I am working on is, and Caroll's actually wanted to do this, you know, when he was still with us. First, we separated his artwork into Christmas and non-Christmas, and because everybody's always said they love his Christmas cards that he does, and I've already found a drawing of his that I'm using this year. Blah blah blah. You know, it's always going to be a Caroll drawing, and there's plenty of them that nobody's seen. But we always thought a coffee table Christmas card book of Caroll Spinney, and I have proposed the idea. It's not been, you know, picked up. I go first to Sesame Street because they own the characters and all that. But they were having a little COVID didn't help because nobody was doing anything. But, so I'm trying to follow up with that. And if they don't think they can do it, then I would like to be able to find somebody who would be interested. And then, of course, as you know, he has art that is loads of art that isn't Christmassy.
Yeah.
So even a book of Caroll's art. Otherwise,
I think it's a lovely idea.
And that's one thing that Caroll never got in his life that he always wanted. The one thing, and that is to be recognized as an artist, like really recognized. And I want to make that happen for him. You know, it's that good. You know, it's not just because we love him that we think he's good. He's really good.
Yeah, he's just good.
So I just want to, he's just good. Yeah. So I want his art to be out there.
That's great.
So that's my other hobby.
Well, good luck on both of those.
Yeah.
Here's another question for you.
Oh,
At Starman's Art asks, do you have any favorite memory from the set of Follow That Bird?
Oh, gosh. We loved doing Follow That Bird. That was just so, everything about it was wonderful. From the fact that from my point of view, the director, Ken Kwapis, who was new to Muppets, he said to me, when he came and visited Caroll and me at the house here, and he, you know, got the feel of who we were and all that stuff. He said, I want you to know that I'd like you to sit next to me whatever we're shooting. And I want you to tell me what you think. And if you think Caroll would want it different. Now, no director says that to the wife of the star, like, oh, tell me if you don't like what I'm doing, you know? And, but he said, no, I think you'll know if I did this, if this is right, because I never did this before. So he was so giving and so wonderful. I hardly had to say anything because he knew exactly what he was doing. But occasionally he'd say, do you think Caroll would have liked it from this angle instead? And I'd say, you know, Big Bird that is a better angle for him because I know what Caroll would say. You know, so, and at the end of the movie, he gave me a credit, special assistant, Debi Spinney. So that was my big claim to fame, like, oh my God, I got a credit. But he was so giving and so understanding that was, for me, the first time I was like treated as part of the team. You know what I mean? Like, not just Caroll's wife, but like I, you know what you're doing kind of thing. So that was very flattering and really nice. But I loved when they were doing the song One Little Star and Big Bird's up in the hay in the barn. And it's kind of a duet with Olivia and Big Bird. And it's a beautiful song. Underneath that, at the same time that's happening at 2:00 in the morning, which I don't know how Caroll ever stayed awake because it was a long, long day. A cow was giving birth to a calf right underneath that. And it was like a breech birth. So they had to reach in and turn the baby. Gosh. And then the calf came out. And as soon as it came out, of course, it's always covered with, you know, yucky stuff. And the flies, a zillion flies covered this cow. It looked black, you know, it just looked like a black calf. And to me, that stands out in my mind. And they named the cow Big Bird. But but that moment just stands out in my mind because here's this beautiful music wafting above our heads, and here's this cow going, oh, you know, just
that is so funny.
Trying to give birth. So that was kind of a standout moment. But loved doing that movie. It was just the music was so much fun. The whole cast would sing "Easy Going Day" like out loud down the street. We were all just singing those songs. Were
It was
fantastic.
great music from
So,
that.
plus we had fun in
Yeah.
Toronto too.
Lisa Soares, she said your little roadie Putnam frame shop friend sends her love.
Oh,
And
okay. Hi, Lisa.
and she was asking
Yes.
about the extra stuff from I Am Big Bird. I think there was something out there about releasing the Spinney cut of I Am Big Bird.
Oh, I think that a lot of people had asked if there could be more home movies in it. Like in the special features part. And I'm certainly happy to do that. I mean, I have such good stuff because I took movies of everything. I mean, really, it's ridiculous. But I don't know that they're going to put that out. I mean, if I was more computer savvy, that maybe Matt, you'll help me. I could do things where I put out home movies. I mean, I even have a making of a Muppet Family Christmas that I took. That is the making, of all the guys doing it, and it is the making of that show, and that was one of the favorite shows we ever did. That show,
Yeah.
and I just love that I taped the background.
I know,
you
yeah,
know?
you got.
So I got lots of stuff that could be seen.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I don't know if it's going to be affiliated with I Am Big Bird, but it would be nice to have it out there.
It would be. I agree.
Yeah.
From Charles_Tucker790 says, what's your best favorite moment with Caroll, Jim Henson, and the rest of the Puppeteers? Was there like a moment that you can think of?
Oh God, and Jim. Well, I just love, I've already touched on, I guess, just being on set and watching them all work. It's just so much fun and hysterical and all that kind of stuff. Traveling with everybody and doing stuff like when we did the Muppet Show, that was kind of, unique. And then that stood out as compared to a lot of other things. And, we went out to crazy places in London and we went gambling with Jim and the Ritz and, stuff like that. So those are kind of the fun stuff, going to the movies to see The Princess Bride. Now, Jim's on one side, Carol's on another, and I'm in the middle. I'm like, this is so cool, just silly stuff, So I guess those kind of things do stand out, but there's a zillion of them, so it's hard to really pick one out. Really.
James Nobes asks, and it says, did you have a favorite character that Caroll played that was not used frequently? So I guess not Big Bird and Oscar.
Oh, okay. Well, I honestly, I did love Bruno. I think he's fantastic. I love the illusion
It's a
of
great
Bruno.
illusion.
And, he's fabulous. And the story, first of all, the fact that Caroll designed him and invented him, shall we say, that Caroll was always very proud of that. Like he actually had a Muppet he created. And really he was created for the symphony concert show because we could not how do you get Caroll out on the stage with Oscar without the kids seeing the man? So that came to Caroll and said, this is going to be great. And then, of course, he puts roller skates on him and we're all having a heart attack in the audience going, he's going to fall off the stage because there's no monitor, you can't see a darn thing. So, I would say I love Bruno. I think he's just such a great character and I love the illusion of it. It just works.
It does.
Works really well.
He would be cool to see again.
So Bruno. I'll go with
Bruno, great choice.
Yeah,
I wish I could. There were so many questions, Debbie, but we don't have time. But they're all great questions, and I wish I could. Maybe sometime we'll revisit those because right now we have to do some rapid fire questions.
Oh,
now
okay.
I'm going to do this a little different. I'm going to do it two different ways, Debbie. So first, I'm going to ask you some questions that are from your perspective of Caroll's work. Okay, so answer these questions. Here we go. Seeing the world through Caroll's eyes.
Okay.
What was the hardest part for him about being a puppeteer?
I would say the group effort musical numbers. Those
the
are the
choreography,
hardest.
Right. So then for Caroll, what was the easiest part of puppeteering?
Just just letting it be, just being who the character is.
What was Caroll's biggest? Well, that's probably his biggest strength as a puppeteer. What do you think his biggest strength as a puppeteer was?
I mean, I do love his voices. I think to me, I think they were such recognizable, strong voices. But that also came kind of natural, because if you're just sitting with Caroll, sooner or later, if he's excited, Big Bird comes out, and if he's a little upset, Oscar comes out. So it's just there. Once again, it's just there, you know.
What was one of Caroll's favorite things about being a Muppet performer?
He loved. I just think he loved being able to step into the being, the soul of somebody else, and completely be enveloped by this, and just escape being Caroll Spinney and be somebody else who they're not being bullied. They're not, none of that stuff that happened to him when he was little. He became these wonderful characters.
All right, now for you, Debbie, these questions are especially for you to answer from your point of view. What was the easiest part about being married to Caroll Spinney?
That's easy. He knew how to love me better than I've ever heard anybody knows how to love anybody. So I was loved so well.
What was the most difficult part?
Well, that would be not having him here anymore, because I miss every minute of every day.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite things about being around Muppet performers for so much of your life with Caroll and with Jim and Jerry and Richard?
I just think that we all feel like true family to each other. Not just friends, but it feels more like a family. And I know the love is there, the humor is there, the camaraderie, if you need a shoulder to cry on, it's there. It's truly a bunch of people who have so much in common and who truly love each other.
And finally, that's great. And finally, Jerry Nelson once said to me, Sesame Street's great, but you always have to have something that is your own, that you create. So your own thing. What is that for you, Debi Spinney? Your own thing.
What is that for me? I don't, that's a hard question for me, because really I just feel like my whole life Caroll was my own thing, and that's the truth. So I'm kind of looking for it now, I suppose, because I never had. My family is very important to me, always has been, and Caroll, they're our kids and my brothers and sisters, they're our best friends. So that's the most important thing to me, other than the legacy that I'm trying to work up for Caroll and stuff like that. But just family, and I still want to travel. And try to just, I don't know. That's a hard one, because I don't think of myself as the center. I think of Caroll as the center. Now all of a sudden I'm the center, and I don't really like
hear
that.
You, but I do have a suggestion for you, and something that you could do that's just for you.
Okay.
Take up the violin. Why not, right?
I like that.
Debbie, thank you so much for talking with me.
Right.
I appreciate it, and I love you.
I love you too, Matt, so much. Say hi to everybody for me, okay?
I will do.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
I just love Debi Spinney. She's the best. And that is it. That is Below the Frame. We will be back next week with my talk with Star Wars and Muppet performer Mike Quinn. You can get updates and stuff about Below the Frame and Muppets and Sesame Street and everything else that I feel like posting on my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok accounts at WelcomeMattV, or just search my name. Below the Frame is produced by me, Matt Vogel, and if you like the show, please rate and review it wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you very much in advance. The theme song for Below the Frame was written by Stephanie DeBruzzo and performed by my band, The Mighty Weaklings. Our podcast logo was created by Dave Holteen at DaveHolteenDesign.com. Special thanks to Dave Goelz for sharing his Jerry story today, and thanks to you, the fans, for listening. I am Matt Vogel. We will see you next time when we go Below the Frame. Bye.
Go, 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 below